The high imperial court of the Dominion shimmered in pristine obsidian and gold, a silent testament to 10,000 years of unyielding order. At the center of the grand dais stood Princess Vael, her silken robes reflecting the harsh, ambient light of the central spire. Beside her stood Arthur, a quietly dressed human in a simple dark suit, his hands clasped casually behind his back. To the assembled lords, he was nothing more than an unrefined mammalian servant, an insignificant footnote from an obscure, low-tier planet called Earth. Vael's ascent to the supreme throne required an unquestionable display of strength and absolute apathy toward weakness. Whispers of her alleged sentimentality had begun to circulate among her political rivals, threatening her standing before the High Council. To crush these rumors, she made a cold, calculated decision. She would execute her quiet human secretary in the most brutal fashion imaginable, broadcasting his final moments across the realm as a testament to her ruthless resolve. Arthur offered no resistance as the heavy energy shackles snapped around his wrists, his face remaining entirely serene as the judgment was read aloud. He was sentenced to exile on Xylar 9, a world universally recognized as a Class-10 Lethal Biohazard, a place where no known sentient species had ever survived past a single orbital cycle. As the guards led him toward the drop pod, Arthur simply nodded toward Vael, uttering a soft, enigmatic statement that left the council in momentary silence. "I appreciate the assignment, Your Highness." The drop pod slammed into the rocky terrain of Xylar 9 with a thunderous impact, throwing up clouds of thick, sulfurous mist. Inside the vessel, warning lights flashed crimson, alerting the occupant to extreme atmospheric pressure, corrosive ambient gases, and hyper-dense gravity. High above the planet, the quartz surveillance satellites positioned themselves to broadcast the human's immediate physical demise to billions of eager viewers across the Dominion. The heavy airlock door hissed open, releasing a plume of yellow haze into the cramped cabin. Arthur stepped out into the open air, taking a deep, deliberate breath that caused the observing alien medical corps to gasp in anticipation of his lungs liquefying. Instead, Arthur merely cleared his throat, rolled his shoulders, and smiled as the heavy gravity settled onto his frame like a familiar, comforting weighted blanket. To an entity raised in Earth's harsh biosphere, the poisonous atmosphere tasted like a slightly salty, sulfur-heavy hot spring. Scanning his immediate surroundings, Arthur observed towering, jagged flora that secreted corrosive acid onto the muddy ground below. He casually reached out, plucked a glowing orange fruit from a venomous tendril, and took a cautious bite. The lethal compound within the fruit merely tingled on his tongue, offering a zesty, citrus-like flavor that brought a genuine grin to his face. The broadcast feed displayed a real-time biometric readout of a human experiencing what could only be described as total relaxation. Across the capital system, screens mounted in public squares and private nobility chambers aired the live feed of Xylar 9. Expecting a horrific spectacle of agony and destruction, the audience instead watched in utter bewilderment as the abandoned human began gathering fallen timber. What the aliens viewed as hyper-dense, unyielding iron wood, Arthur lifted with effortless ease, stacking the heavy logs into a sturdy, well-engineered wilderness shelter. In the high tower of the capital, Princess Vael stared at the primary display in mounting frustration and disbelief. The biometric telemetry transmitted from Arthur's locator beacon showed zero signs of panic, elevated heart rate, or physiological distress. His oxygen absorption levels remained entirely stable, and his core body temperature had not fluctuated despite the blistering geothermal vents nearby. Her planned display of cold dominance was rapidly dissolving into a surreal display of human endurance. By the evening of the second cycle, the viewing metrics for the broadcast had shattered every record in Dominion history. Citizens and nobles alike watched as the human constructed a stone fire pit, kindled a flame using friction, and casually roasted native root vegetables over the open blaze. What was supposed to be a slow execution had transformed into the most watched survival program in the history of the galaxy, turning Arthur into an overnight legend. On the third cycle, the narrative shifted dramatically when the local ecosystem reacted to the foreign intruder. Out from the dense, misty canopy emerged a Xylar razor beast, an apex predator standing 3 meters tall, covered in armored chitin, and wielding retractable scythe-like claws dripping with neurotoxic venom. The alien audience held its collective breath, anticipating the violent climax they had originally tuned in to see. The beast let out a gut-wrenching screech that rattled the camera sensors, lunging forward with terrifying speed toward the campfire. Arthur didn't even reach for a weapon, he simply stood up, adjusted his posture, and locked eyes with the creature. Drawing upon thousands of years of human apex predator evolution, Arthur raised his hand, lowered his voice to a calm, authoritative frequency, and made a firm, sharp clicking sound with his tongue. Confused by the total absence of fear signals, the razor beast hesitated, its predatory instincts short-circuiting under the human's steady, unyielding gaze. Arthur slowly reached into his pocket, tossed a chunk of cooked, savory meat toward the creature's feet, and patted his own knee invitationally. Within 10 minutes, the most feared monster on XYLAR-9 was resting its massive, armored head in Arthur's lap while he casually scratched it behind its sensory horns. By the 5th cycle, Arthur had fully adapted to his new environment, establishing a routine that looked strikingly like a luxury retreat. He discovered a thermal river enriched with dense mineral salts that the Galactic database classified as a lethal acid bath. To Arthur, it was the ultimate natural spa, soaking away the stiffness accumulated from years of sitting at a desk in the Imperial Palace. He spent his afternoons exploring the surrounding mountain ranges, riding atop his domesticated razor beast, whom he had affectionately named Barnaby. The extreme gravitational pull of the planet, which would have crushed an average alien's skeletal frame over time, was actually improving Arthur's muscle density and physical conditioning. He felt more energized and athletic than he had in decades. Back on the capital world, political commentators were in an uproar over the failure of the execution trial. Princess Vael found herself the subject of widespread ridicule, as her attempt to prove her ruthlessness had instead highlighted the absurd resilience of her former servant. Desperate to salvage her political standing, her rivals on the High Council began formulating a secret plan to interfere directly with the trial. Unwilling to let Princess Vael survive this political blunder, a faction of rogue counselors covertly hired an elite group of mercenary assassins. Their objective was simple: land on Xylar 9 under the cover of a blackout, eliminate the human on live video, and make it appear as though the planet had finally claimed his life. A heavily armed assault transport slipped past orbital monitors, descending silently into the foggy valleys of the Poison World. Arthur was sitting outside his shelter, enjoying a warm cup of herbal tea brewed from crushed native leaves, when Barnaby let out a low, vibrating growl. The human stood up, wiping his hands, his keen ears picking up the muffled hum of high-grade suborbital thrusters landing a few kilometers away. His relaxed demeanor shifted instantly, replaced by the sharp, focused awareness of a trained military operative. The mercenary team, equipped with high-yield plasma rifles and heavy kinetic shielding, deployed into the jungle, expecting a quick and easy ambush. They moved slowly, burdened by heavy environmental suits necessary to survive the planet's atmospheric pressure and toxic mist. Unbeknownst to them, the unarmed target they were hunting was already moving through the dense foliage above them with silent, terrifying speed. The first mercenary fell without making a sound. Arthur dropped from a high branch, using the planet's heavy gravity to amplify his impact, landing cleanly on the aliens' power pack and disabling their primary suit systems. Before the remaining squad members could react, Arthur dissolved back into the thick, sulfurous fog, leaving the mercenaries disoriented and scrambling to reform their defensive perimeter. Their plasma fire tore through the alien flora, lighting up the gloom with bright blue flashes, but their slow movements were no match for human agility in high gravity. Arthur utilized basic Earth guerrilla tactics, trapping the heavy mercenaries in natural sinkholes and using the native bio-corrosive vines as improvised snares. One by one, the elite killers were disarmed, immobilized, and stripped of their weapons with mechanical precision. The live transmission cameras, still recording from orbital probes, captured the entire engagement in high-definition clarity. Galaxies away, millions of viewers watched in absolute awe as a single, unarmored human systematically dismantled an entire squad of galactic mercenaries using nothing but terrain awareness, physical strength, and sheer tactical intelligence. The myth of human weakness was shattered forever in a matter of minutes. Realizing the sabotage attempt had failed spectacularly, Princess Vael commandeered her personal flagship and descended directly to Exile-9 to regain control of the situation. As her landing shuttle touched down near Arthur's campsite, her royal guard deployed in a tight defensive perimeter, their weapons raised in extreme apprehension. The princess stepped out onto the landing ramp, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear, shame, and intense curiosity. She found Arthur sitting calmly on a carved wooden bench near his campfire, sipping his tea while the bound and gagged mercenaries lay neatly stacked near the edge of the clearing. Barnaby sat contentedly beside him, letting out a soft, rumbling purr as Arthur casually petted its massive head. The human looked up, offered a polite, professional smile, and gestured toward an empty wooden chair across from him. "Welcome to Xylar 9, Your Highness," Arthur said smoothly, his voice carrying the same polite composure he had maintained in the palace halls. "The climate here is remarkably pleasant this time of year. Can I offer you a hot beverage before we discuss the resolution of my trial?" Vael stood frozen, completely overwhelmed by the surreal scene before her. Shaken to her core, Princess Vael slowly approached the campfire, sitting down opposite her former secretary while her guards remained on high alert. "How are you alive, Arthur?" she whispered, her pride completely shattered. "This world is a graveyard for every known species. The air alone should have destroyed your internal organs within seconds." Arthur took a quiet sip from his mug before setting it down on a flat stone. "The Galactic database has a habit of misclassifying worlds based on narrow biological standards," he explained calmly. "To your people, this atmosphere is lethal. To a human from Earth, it's just a humid afternoon with a bit of sulfur. Our home world produced organisms that thrive on chaos, toxicity, and extreme environmental pressures." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, highly classified data slate bearing the seal of the United Earth Defense Council. "You see, Princess, humanity didn't join the galactic community to be protected or patronized," Arthur continued, his eyes gleaming with a quiet, sharp authority. "We joined to observe, and my assignment was specifically designed to evaluate whether your dominion was mature enough to handle peaceful diplomatic relations." Princess Vael stared at the data slate in utter shock as the realization dawned on her. Humanity wasn't a weak, primitive species struggling to fit into the galaxy. They were a sleeping giant, keeping their immense physical capabilities hidden behind a facade of quiet diplomacy. Earth wasn't a backwater planet, it was the ultimate training ground, producing individuals who viewed the galaxy's most terrifying deathworlds as simple vacation spots. "So, you were never my prisoner," Vael said softly, her voice trembling slightly as she looked at the defeated mercenaries and then back to the relaxed human. "You were simply assessing us." Arthur chuckled warmly, shaking his head. "I was doing my job, Your Highness. Though I must admit, your political trial gave me the best week of rest and relaxation I've had in over 10 years. Arthur stood up, stretched his arms, and handed the princess an official diplomatic report detailing her political rival's treasonous actions with the mercenaries. "I believe this clears up your council problems," Arthur said with a polite nod. "Now, if it pleases the court, I would like to request 2 more weeks of paid administrative leave right here on Xylar 9. The hot springs are doing wonders for my back. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe my channel.